Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are recording.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We now reconvene and move to item 11.4 on the agenda. Funding for Museum Miyazaki House and Visitor Center.
Mr. Mayor. So as has been the case for a very long time, the Willowa District Historical Society, in fact, it's called the museum, but it's actually its own society, has been operating both the museum through an agreement that goes back to the 1980s. And it's been working through that agreement to run the museum for the district as well. It has been operating the Visitor Information Center for quite some time. And with the effects of COVID, being the museum, as I understand it, speak from my experience in the last couple of years, is that it gave an opportunity for the board and members of the society to sort of rethink the purpose of the society, the purpose of that museum space, and in reflection and comparison to other museums and other small communities, to see if there might be a better way of having a museum here in Willowa. So during COVID, there was, of course, mandatory shutdowns of a lot of things. It affected their activities, dramatically affected their donations. Declined the attachments of the report. So coming out of COVID, this museum board decided that they were going to focus more on their core function of operating a historical society, which includes a museum, include other things as they develop. So in discussion with the Miyazaki House Society, which also has an agreement with the District of Willowa to operate that facility, decided that it was potentially a really good idea to move the Visitor Information Center to the Miyazaki House Society to take some of that work pressure off of the Historical Society for this year, possibly longer. And to bring more attention to the Miyazaki House Society, seeing what had happened with the revitalization of the Sloan Garden, raising awareness of everything that we're seeing in the province of Japanese heritage. That it was possibly the year to try to draw tourists and visitors over to the Miyazaki House Society. So there was many discussions and meetings between the Historical Society and Miyazaki House Society about this move. It was agreed that this was the year to do it, to try it out perhaps. Unfortunately, it was realized later by the Miyazaki House Society that the approach they wanted to take and the startup costs of bringing the visitor center over there were more than they had anticipated, more than anyone involved had anticipated. There's some confusion in the conversations between the three parties as to how the total funding that the district provides these two entities would be allocated. So here we are today, council consider options that are presented, or come up with yourself, but you present these options to staff, to council in the priority order. Option one is what I recommend is the easiest path forward to solve the problem of the funding shortfall. And option two, if council is uncomfortable with increasing funding for this overall plan by $10,000 this one time, that council could have a discussion right here about allocating the existing funding that is in the budget, which is $22,000 has historically been going to the Willowa District Historical Society. $6,000 has been going to the Miyazaki House Society. And note that the Destination BC funding, which has been increased to $15,000 a year, is something independent of the district's decision making. We can assign it to a sponsor organization, assign it to the Miyazaki House Society for this year, or we can't reallocate those funds. The district that really has this $28,000 pot of money split between these two organizations, but now transferred kind of a tertiary role. There's neither society's core function is to run a visitor information center. It could be run by any sponsor organization. And as that is part of the recommendation from staff is that if council sees us getting over this hump of this year, expect the council to direct staff to have those conversations with both these two organizations, perhaps other ones in the community that may have an interest in running the information center from from where I came in Summerlin, it was actually the Chamber of Commerce who ran the Visitor Information Center. There's just some really good synergies there that they had. So I see it as an opportunity here to really relook at all these relationships, even existing agreements that exist from the 1980s of the Historical Society. It's more recent one, the Miyazaki House Societies. There's a lack of clarity that's been modernized to the current reality that we're in, what's expected of these organizations, and what they can expect from the district. Because their funding each year, although it's in our budget, it's in the district's budget, that this money is there. It's actually discretionary for council how it wishes to distribute it, as we saw a couple of years ago, at the start of COVID. $10,000 out of that 22,000 was allocated to tourism, a little bit, to build a brand new online presence. So it wasn't guaranteed and automatically handed over to this part of the society. So that's that uncertainty, as we heard about the labs and their concerns about uncertainty of funding. Is I think it would be valuable for both the district and these societies to have certainty going forward about what they can expect financially support from the district. In turn, the district should have certainty as to what exactly these societies are doing with this fund. There are clauses in the agreements that they provide the district with their financial statements, provide the district with their plan for the coming year. But that's it. It's simply to provide it and put it in a folder and away we go. And that's the discretionary decision of the council. There's no actual connection between these two requirements or expectations. So staff, we recommend that we use our contingency fund, which is a healthy amount, which John can confirm that. To use it for the purpose it was intended to as an operational one-time expenditure for this year to get the Miyazaki House fully funded for the Tourism Information Center. First to re-examine this and come back as part of the 2023 budget to decide, for council to decide what's the best way forward with the Visitor Information Center. Same question.
Yep. Councilor Leach.
All right, so to start this off, when this first came to us, was prior to the current staff being here. The clarity that Jeremy was speaking to about getting updated contracts is what I was trying to ask for back then. And what the council and district's expectation of each of the organizations is to have those flushed out more. So I definitely support staff working with both organizations to work on that. I think that's just, liability for our sake, because we are just handing money over. And really, we sort of know where it's going, but I can't positively go out to a community member and say, oh yeah, that $6,000 the Miyazaki got last year, it went towards this, right? So I think we need some more transparency there. That being said, I don't, with the work that is being done at the museum currently, I'm so thankful that it's happening. I've said this before, the museum, when I walked into that museum as an adult, nothing had changed from the time when I was a child. And I love going to museums every time we are out of the community. We always make a point of taking our kids there. And there is so much that can be done and so much learning that can be done. And I think it's a huge asset. So I do not feel comfortable cutting any funding from the museum. But I also, at the same point, again, years ago when this came to us, I've also fought for the Miyazaki to have an increase to their funds, because they do have a lot of plans. There's a want there, but they can't seem to get the funding behind them to move forward or also the support, and have them having the visitor center support currently is, I think, a learning opportunity for them for what is involved in it, and will give them some insights into connections and networking skills to go forward. Therefore, I do support options with this recommendation. Thank you.
Councilor Weave.
Yes, through the mayor, I have a couple of questions. And it sits with a bad taste in my mouth, the way this whole thing works down. I really believe that player players involved saw money, the $15,000, and thought that there was going to be an abundance there after this, that, and the other thing. I've had conversations with a couple of different people about this, so I do know that the employee for the visitor center is also doing various different things at the Miyazaki house. So I'm like, okay, so we're using visitor information money to pay an employee to do other jobs, which doesn't sit well with me when you're in a contract with Destination BC. And I would really like to know what the startup costs consist of, because if these are assets, like, I don't know, let's say shelving, racks to, like, display racks, computers, whatever, those should move along with the information center as it changes places. If we're going to deal with other societies or our chamber to see. So this one-time $10,000 startup cost, I would like to know where that $10,000 is going and make sure that whatever assets are purchased, if we decide to, to move it back to the museum, make it a separate entity, deal with the chamber, whatever, that assets. I don't want to be approached every year for startup costs. Let's put it that way. I do realize I'm fully understanding of the situation right now, because I think also, like Councillor Leach, that what is going on at the museum right now is phenomenal. And I think they're finding things that we as a community didn't even know were valuable and possibly should be in bigger museums as well, where these artifacts can be, I mean, to have a bunch of stuff in the basement isn't really taking care of your history or your artifacts. So to pull their funding would be ridiculous to me. So I think they need that funding to move forward. They already have commitments. I think the young lady that did the delegation tonight was phenomenal, or, whichever. I just, like I say, that startup cost thing really bothers me. I also heard something about extended times or whatever. I don't know. I'm getting mixed up in conversations I've had along with the reports, and I really don't know what to take as a fact and not a fact. I'm okay for this particular season to okay the $10,000 and okay the $22,000 for the museum. And I also wanted to ask our finance lady, see, as COVID took place and the Miyazaki House didn't take funding for a couple of years, where does that money go? If we're still there, Ms. LaRue.
She's there.
Yes. Oh, I don't know where I am on that. Helps if you help it. Sorry. So just like anything else that's in the budget, should it not be spent, it stays, in the case of the Miyazaki funding, it stays in our accumulated surplus and it rolls over year to year. If it had been something that was to be paid out of a reserve, then of course it would just stay in that reserve. So the money just didn't get spent, it stayed in our accumulated surplus.
What kind of plans were made for the Miyazaki House moving forward during the time that things were closed and shut down, that all of a sudden we're, you're going to be a visitor center and you're going to this and you're going to, didn't seem like there was a lot of planning taking place there. So that was my other concern, but my main one is this, equipment and list of assets and whatever the startup costs covered, because if the startup costs are covering.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the tangible assets, just for clarity, the tangible assets aren't something that we can force them to move unless council chooses to amend this motion to make it a conditional funding.
Well, then I would like to amend the motion, because I think if we're paying $10,000 for startup costs and there are tangible assets involved in that, that those tangible assets should belong to the visitor center, not the Miyazaki House or the museum or the Chamber of Commerce, whoever decides to take it on. Yeah, because other than that, every single year, you're going to have startup costs, which doesn't make sense to me. Yes, if we can amend.
There's no motion currently on.
Oh,
No, we're just, we're still talking.
Yeah, so it would just be a new motion that would be made.
that would be wonderful.
Counselor Howell.
I agree.
Thank you, okay.
But I do have a question to the mayor, to staff, just for confirmation, that 5,400 in startup costs, that is from Destination BC. That's not part of what the district has to pay forward. So it could technically be Destination BC that would pay that every year if for some reason it didn't happen to get on motion.
Yeah, they haven't broken it down as to where the funding comes to where it goes. They just conglomerate all the funding and then say, here's all our costs.
Okay.
So it's really how we should see it, but
Okay. And I just want to confirm, sorry, through the mayor, to staff, this is a bit convoluted because, like Councillor Leach says, and has been asking for numerous years, is that it's a revision of the contracts, a re-going over, because it leaves things so convoluted. There's so much room for misunderstanding or misreading. And I understand these societies look forward to these monies in order to continue into the next year. So, but I do want to just confirm that $22,000, that's viewed by the district, but that is viewed as discretionary by the district, correct?
it's at the council's discretion to disperse those funds however it chooses.
And it's voted annually by council in the budget.
It's assumed that it would go to the Historical Society if they meet their obligations,
Mhm.
because it is a line item saying it's for that.
Mhm.
So if there's no changes year to year, it's not gonna come back once it's been adopted by the council, as part of the budget. But as has happened in 2020, I think it was, for discussion with the Historical Society in terms of Lillooet, it was brought back to council saying, here's this $22,000. It's at your discretion if you wish to send 10 of it to the tourist, to Lillooet Tourism to build that online presence. So that discretionary change in what it was spent on was up to council. So if council wanted to, through the process, there could be a process through these new agreements between societies to always have it come back and have these societies provide a presentation, provide the details as to why those funds should be dispersed every year. Or it could just be something that's worked out in the formation of the agreements themselves. Staff would present these draft agreements to council and it would go, yes, if they meet these requirements, it's a done deal, don't make actions.
Okay, that sounds great. Then I very much look forward to hearing how this conversation went and seeing those new agreements. And
Okay.
thank you.
Counselor Leach.
I have one other question, and I'm sorry if it's opening a can of worms. Because these funds, which are ultimately, funded by taxpayers, because they're being used, some of them are being used towards, staffing and wages. Does that conflict with any of our union agreements? At all, just out of curiosity?
It's like a third party service agreement if they have somebody maintaining our irrigation system, that's the contractor. So they are service agreements.
So that makes it even more poignant to actually have proper agreements in place.
Counselor Weed.
Yes, like I say, this whole thing just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. The $22,000 was always given to the Historical Society for as long as I've been on council or coming to council meetings. That was just a no-brainer. And then another society comes in and, I mean, thank you for figuring this out so that we're not taking money from one society which has always gotten it and is expecting it and has done their plan, knowing this is coming in July or August, whenever the checks are written, and this other society thinks that they're going to get a portion of it. Like, that doesn't sit well with me. Like, we didn't have a plan going into taking over the visitor information center. And the other part that I really can't stress enough is there a contract with Destination BC? Or how does that work? Because they give you $15,000 to pay an employee $25 an hour for 600 hours of work. And now we have a society paying an employee $20 an hour for more hours of work. Like, that just doesn't sit well with me. Like, either you're doing it the way the visitor information center is supposed to be done, or bow out of doing it, I suppose, or leave it where it was. I mean, I know it was not good to leave it where it was because of the work that's going on at the museum, and I get that. And I really think that we need to, in the next, hopefully the new council and mayor will look at working with the chamber, or I think it would be great if it was a separate entity altogether. This is our visitor information center. I always thought it would be great to have it down at Campground up the booth. I don't think the Miyazaki House is an appropriate place for it. I think, especially when the new development comes across the way at KC Health, there is no way you're going to have buses down there. They can't use Russell Lane. It's a nightmare. So for them to park at the museum and Downton Park, and then it just doesn't make sense to me, none whatsoever. Maybe we should think of having an information center at Downton Park under the lovely lighting. Where there's washrooms. That's the other thing, right? Like, there's one washroom at Miyazaki House, unless you've got those 2 flights upstairs, which, yeah, is a liability issue, I would think. Thank you.
I just wanted to point, because Councillor Weed pointed out that if Destination BC had a standard for a certain wage for so many hours, and then that is not what they're actually paying their wage, that leaves the society up for liability. And if Destination BC found out that they weren't following what they're supposed to be, they will lose that contract, and that's a liability to them. So that is something that should be planned appropriately within the society. So not something that we have control over, but let it be aware that, contracts with these organizations need to be followed.
If I could say something to keep in mind, books is something you have in the strategic plan. The unfortunate part is that we ran out of time, and that is to have a really good heritage policy, clean up a lot of that in terms of, from a council member. I think it really behooves us that we have to be bothered every year by that. You get a heritage policy, X number of funds is going to you, X number you, go away, do your stuff. And the societies, as Councillor Leach has been saying for years, it's the same thing. And the societies themselves have to look at the Constitution and reinvigorate them and part BC Destination, the visitor center. That's key, and it can be tourism Lillooet, it can be chamber, or it can be located where it's best suited. Doesn't matter who it is. So I think the heritage, it's going to be another year, but the heritage policy should take away the work from councilors and the work from staff. And that's what Councillor Leach for that.
I also just want to say for the record too, after visiting Salmon Arm and seeing what the Salmon Arm Economic Development Society has done, I know it just came to us and it's kind of locked in for a couple of years, but I think these societies, as they go forward, take real consideration of that MRDT tax and see if they have the capacity to manage that, because that is some really good tax money coming in that can be redistributed into the community for economic benefit. I understand that the Chamber of Commerce has use for it right now, but, you know, if we want to support arts and heritage, which ultimately supports the Chamber of Commerce, then maybe this is a way forward, that isn't actually hurting taxpayers' pocketbooks. So
Yeah.
just for consideration in the future and future funding.
Okay, so are we looking at the type of option one with the amendment on tangible assets? Not saying that they belong, my comments on that, not to belong to BC destinations. Or to be under visitor center under our district of Lillooet auspices. In other words, it stays in the ownership of the district, doesn't belong to BC. That makes sense? How does that go? I mean, it's a visitor center type thing, but belongs to the district. Is what I'm worried about. I don't want it belonging to, you know, the province.
So I agree, but I don't want it belonging to the society that's using it for startup costs today. I think it needs to move with.
It should move to wherever the visitor center is going. Make sense?
Yes,
Mr. Taylor, you think you
he's
could?
working.
Okay.
He's smoke coming out of the end of the stencil.
I would look at the little puppet there.
Mr. Mayor, my suggestion would be that in between the and that and the further that, council consider and that the Miyazaki House report on purchased assets to be retained as district assets to be for the exclusive use of the Visitor Information Center, irrespective of what group is operating the Visitor Information Center.
With that. Okay, then who will move as is written and amended as Mr. Taylor has just highlighted? Counselor Weed moved, Counselor Leach second. Any further discussion? Call the question, all those in favor? Carried. Well done, folks. Now, 11.5, a little bit Indigenous Court Steering Committee.
Yeah, there's no.
Oh, wait, hurry before she gets back.
Did you guys vote on it?
Yeah,
What did you do?
10,000 to the.
we're still in the meeting. Okay. Quiet, thank you. Forgot about you, you're gone so long.
I know, I Phil and I have been for besties now.
Welcome back, Councillor Hall.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item 11.5, the Lillooet Indigenous Court Steering Committee. I've been initially involved with it, and the acting mayors have been filling in for me. It's a really important initiative, and I really feel it could play a role. I know the CAO and I have discussed it a while back, where it can be eventually situated. the courthouse or whatever it is, so there's a role the district can play, but at the same time, they really need their support, and I think the transition to someone who wants to be part of that committee and it should be appointed officially rather than that, so how do we sit with that, you guys? That's the interest. Councillor Hopple.
Would like to nominate. Or Danica, I think she's had an interest for a long, long time, and I think she'd be really good at it.
Any further? No? All in favor?
So Councillor Hop, for the record, you accept the nomination.
I read it in her eyes.
Good.
Thank you.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, I need something a little more tangible.
Okay, someone moved that Councillor Howe be appointed to replace Mayor Bussey on the district representative on the Little Indigenous Court Steering Committee. Moved by Councillor Hopple, second by Councillor Leach. Call the question, those in favor. Carried, thank you. Okay, item 12.1, bylaws and resolutions. DVP 22-005, variance the height of retaining walls at 672 Columbia Street.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. DVP 22-005 is to vary the height of a retaining wall at 672 Columbia. The requested variance is from 1.2 meters to 1.4 meters to replace a wall that is integral to the current driveway stability and protection of the adjacent property. The current retaining wall, which is end of life, also extends onto the road right of way, but within the unconstructed gravel shoulder portion. Staff are recommending the council delegate authority to the Director of Corporate and Development Services to enter into an encroachment agreement with the owners to ensure that adequate insurance is provided and to legalize a private structure on public lands. The structure is mostly below grade and will not have a visual impact on the streetscape as viewed from Columbia and will not increase the impact on the adjacent property that already exists today. Staff are recommending that the variance be approved.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. Then, rather than read it, you read the whole resolution or recommendation.
I did, but I can if you like.
Would you mind?
That development variance permit DP 22-005 for the proposed retaining wall replacement at 672 Columbia Street, legally described as Lot 95, Block 1, Plan K 1099, Lands District 27, Township of Lillooet, to vary the maximum height of retaining wall within a required setback area as prescribed in Section 30A DIII in the District of Lillooet zoning bylaw 2018 number 454 from 1.2 meters to 1.4 meters be approved. And that council authorized the Director of Corporate Development Services to enter into an encroachment agreement to legitimize the area beyond the property line that the existing structure extends into in order to address liability in the public right of way, liability on a public right of way.
Will move. Councillor Howe, second Councillor Weave. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Item 12.2, zoning bylaw amendment to allow carriage house at 91 Brown Road, third reading and adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing to add from the public hearing presentation other than staff recommends that this be read a third time and adopted. Okay. Just for the record, one piece of public feedback was received in support of the proposal.
Somebody moved that the District of Lillooet zoning bylaw 2018 number 454 amending bylaw number 2022-013 be read the third time. Councillor Weave, second Councillor Howe. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Someone moves that the District of Lillooet zoning bylaw 2018 number 454 amending bylaw number 2022-013 be adopted. Councillor Weave, second Councillor Leach. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Move to item 13, work in progress. Any questions or comments from the work in progress? Okay, someone please move that the work in progress as of July 8th, 2022 be received for information. Councillor Weave, second. Councillor Hoppel. Further discussion? All the questions in favor? Carried. Item 14, notice of motion. I have intend to bring a motion forward at the next meeting regarding council remuneration. Just give you a heads up. Myself and the CAO will be sending the information so we can discuss it at the next meeting. Item 15. Item 15 is my report. On June 3rd, I attended Peggy Baum's 90th birthday at the Miyazaki House. It was fantastic entertainment there. I was really impressed, surprised that we've got some really good, talented people in this community, darn it. Just feel that I didn't know more about it. Okay, June 8th, I attended the Pride Parade. Well, that's first one. On June 23rd, had a Ministry of Transport, a 10-mile flight interview outside the district office. On June 25th, I attended the secondary school graduation. And on June 28th, a meeting with grant writers for Chinese Lillooet Heritage. See if we can find funding so that we recognize their cemetery next to ours. On July 6th, I had a meeting with Gary McKay, Executive Director of UBCM, in our council chambers with our CAO. That's it for me. Councillor Hoppel.
Thank you. June 7th, the regular closed meetings. June 8th, Pride Parade, LSS students, what a job they did. It was just really great. We have a lot of pictures on our Interior Health website. Every time you turn it on, it pops up to those pictures and they're really great. So yeah, those students did a really good job. So congrats to them. June 23rd, we had a historical society meeting. So now we're going to monthly meetings, which should be fun. And I think it's the third Thursday of every month that we agreed, and we're having them at the museum. So that's really good. I think it just keeps us more in contact, and we all know what we're all doing, and planning, and farmers just such a great addition. And yeah, it's really good. We're talking about grant funding and managing updates, and yeah, just information sharing, etc. So that's good. June 25th, Multicultural Day at the Friendship Center. So I went to that. That was on a Saturday. It was just starting to get warm. We were under the tent. Great turnout. There's music, laughter, good conversations. Lunch, including bannock, which zipped off the diet right there. Polish pierogies, which I have never tasted, but they were delicious. Chili, and Elaine Rogue brought plant-based ice cream in 6 flavors. Huge trays of this ice cream. And like I said, the sun was coming out. It was pretty nice. I was shocked that you could have plant-based ice cream, but yes, so among other foods, really good. Happy that I went. June 25th, grad weekend. Congrats to all the grads. July 7th was our NETIC meeting. The first one I've ever attended in public, so that was really good. We had a delegation put on by Millie McKenzie, Shelley Leach representing Papeglia Council, and Brandon Barney. They put together a slideshow of the traditional territory of the St'át'imc Nation that showed before and after development pictures, along with the pictures of their ancestors. And they kind of put it together the night before, so it was really well done. For putting it together the night before, and some cultural activities that are and were done on the land. So they would show pictures they showed some pictures of plants that are edible. They showed pictures of plants that were medicinal, things that I would never, it's funny how, some people are just so great with that. I would walk across the forest floor and not have a clue what was what, but I think that they did a really good presentation. It was really interesting, and you can view it on the SLRD website. During the NEDIC roundtable, I mentioned that I was going to speak to the minister at UBCM regarding the Duffy Lake Road, and Sal, the mayor of SLRD REA, said that Brad Visk also had an interest in that road. So I've already reached out to him, and hopefully we can combine forces before we go to SLRD. And then lastly, yesterday I watched the Sea to Sky Destination Education Initiative video. And basically, it was about bringing awareness to our great outdoors and tourism impacts such as garbage, traffic, crowding, overuse, wildlife conflict, negative impacts, just name a few. And they came up with this slogan, "Don't love it to death." And I thought it was a great slogan. And just on a personal note, like my dad, he was a parks warden in Mount Robson for the last 15 years of his working career. And before that, we did a lot of camping. So, and he was always about protecting the forest and doing things respectfully. So one time I was just a kid, I was a little, and I remember not wanting strawberries and cream when we were out camping. So I got out of the camper and went and dumped whatever was left in my bowl about 5 feet out the back of the camper door. And then I went and sat with my parents at the fire. And a few minutes later, my dad came, or however long later, my dad came around the corner and went to get into the back of the camper, and there was a skunk. And he was licking clearly my strawberries and cream. And oh my God, he quietly flipped out at me. And, every time we went camping after that, he was like, and don't, you got to remember, don't put anything on the forest floor, no food, no anything. And, I didn't think I would ever hear the end of it, but I learned. And I think education is key. And if you read a slogan like that, hopefully it will resonate, because the initiative is really, it resonates with me. Don'tLoveItToDeath.com will be out late summer, and I think we should check it out. They did a great job on it, and it's such a catchy phrase. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Howe.
Okay, June 3rd, I was present in the Indigenous Court Steering Committee meeting. And they are rolling out their business plan or their business case. And I know those who were at the, I want to keep wanting to call it an open house, but it was actually more of a workshop. We received the booklets that basically, it's the business plan. I'm looking for them right now, flipping through my books, but they're right here. So the Little One Indigenous Court business case, and I don't know if you guys have seen this, but they're going to be talking to the different communities about what this actually looks like so that everybody's well informed. They're hoping to roll it out come late fall. So I suspect we'll be hearing from them soon. They're currently the group is working underneath the umbrella of the Lillooet Friendship Center. And some of the elders that are going to be participating in this Indigenous court are already participating in other Indigenous court locations as we speak. And there are 8 currently. And I'll just list them off just in case anybody's curious. There's Indigenous court in New Westminster, North Vancouver, Duncan, Nicola Valley, Merritt, Prince George, Kamloops, and Williams Lake. And as most of us know, Indigenous people are grossly overrepresented in the criminal justice system. And when we look at restorative justice, we understand that, being in the Western justice system does not cure or help or rehabilitate. And it's definitely not in line with the core Indigenous protocol. So there is this Indigenous court process that it also ensures now individuals are held to account while still being supported by specific members of their community, the judge, health service providers, and so on. So this Indigenous court in other regions has seen many successes. So I'm really excited to have that located as well. And I, you know, when I was reading this, I had so many questions, and once I read through the whole thing, all of my questions were answered. One of those questions, and I'm just in case you guys are similar in question asking, is legal eligibility. So, you know, who qualifies for Indigenous court? So I'm just gonna quickly read this off to you guys. I know some of you were at the workshop. To be eligible to participate in First Nations court, a First Nations adult or youth must be entering a guilty plea to a criminal code or Controlled Drugs and Substances Act charge that is within the jurisdiction of the provincial court, where one or more of the following is the contributing factor to the criminal conduct. An addiction to alcohol and or other drugs, psychological issues or mental illness, an intellectual disability, including but not limited to fetal alcohol, spectrum disorder, or a criminal record which indicates such problems may exist. And I thought this was really important too. An individual is not eligible in the following circumstances. Offenses resulting in death, example, dangerous driving causing death, where Crown is seeking a federal sentence. Adults who commit crimes of violence against a member of a vulnerable population and crimes of a sexual nature. And I always thought that one was really interesting. And it really, I learned in the workshop that the reason that one is not included is that that is what the elders have requested due to continuing trauma. So I thought the workshop was fantastic, and I know we had many members of the community there, including our sergeant with the RCMP, and he and I had multiple conversations later, actually coming up from a question that Councillor Lee had, which was very similar to a question that I had, which was, this is amazing. And from a restorative justice standpoint, how can we bring this into our non-Indigenous community? And he actually has the framework that's being used in other municipalities that is also seeing some successes. So I'm sure we'll be hearing from him soon regarding that framework. So I'm excited about that too. And yeah, actually, did I just end the workshop, which I believe was June 17th. So we'll add that to my list. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Good.
All done?
Thank you, Connor. Councillor Leach.
Yes, so June 8th, I attended the Pride Parade. It's Plaza's Pride Committee was so nice, an amazing job. I had the numbers of the turnout written down and I left it at home, but the parade filled the block of the street from the municipal hall to the bakery once they got rolling out. So it was pretty large. Jackie Tiger came, Teresa Downs, superintendent of the school district came, from Interior Health. And then on top of it, the amount of spectators that we had just from the community who wanted to come out and support or who were curious as to what this was actually going to look like came out. And I know conversations that I've had with my mom and that she's had with her friends, it brought everything into perspective and it took away some of the fear of what, you know, when you think of Pride Parade, people instantaneously go to the nudity in Vancouver, perhaps, and that's not necessarily what this was. And so it was really nice to see. So congratulations to the students. I'm really thankful we have a lot of all levels of government support on it too. So Brad Biss sent his regards and a message. Nathan Cullen sent his regards and a message. Mayor and staff showed up. It was great. Barb building the fire truck. And it was, yeah, it was awesome. On June 9th, I filled in for Mayor Bussey at the Interior Health Mayor's Roundtable. It was supposed to be for the COVID report, but there was actually no information for the COVID stats. And in fact, it actually shifted to heat preparedness and the new guidelines as to what a heat crisis is. I found that really interesting. If, and so we are actually sectioned off into a little bit of a higher heat category than the southern part of BC. So I believe it is if we have a days of 35 degrees Celsius for more than 3 days. And if the nights don't cool off below 18, we are considered to be in a extreme heat crisis. Which, yeah, right, yeah, so, but that's.
That's a normal day.
It's a normal summer, right? So it was just very interesting and while, you know, everyone else was oohing and awing about how they couldn't imagine that, I was just going, wow, what are we gonna be required to do now? But I mean, it was interesting anyways. That's my take on that. I'm sure there's gonna be much more of the Providence handed down to us to prepare for that.
And they.
Do you have a question?
I have a question.
Sure.
Regarding that. Have you, through the mayor? Do they speak about any potential funding to help with those communities that might be, no? Nothing?
No, it's strictly interior. But I have since seen it come through provincial messaging. I don't know, but you know, they're, you know, rolling out all the warnings, check on your neighbors, you know, encouraging people to get air conditioners. I mean, 'cause apparently people on the coast, most of them don't own air conditioners. I mean, I guess I've been fortunate to have one most of my life. So anyway, yeah. June 15th, I had a SILGA meeting. Lots was discussed. SILGA board is trying to get the biggest municipality in the southern interior to actually come to convention, which is Kelowna. Apparently they haven't participated in a number of years. And so we're having some discussion around that. It's interesting discussion. I don't think the members of the directors at large are super impressed with some of the response they've gotten from the mayor on that, and but I guess we'll see where it goes. There's a new SILGA website coming soon. I did submit the photo of Mr. Dennegar, Mr. Taylor, and Mayor Bussey and Mrs. Bussey behind the banner to the SILGA newsletter, and they put it in there, so all of Southern Interior got to see that. I was nominated to sit on the Community Excellence Committee for the awards. And then we just spoke to a multitude of topics that we would like to, for resolution going into UBCM to speak with the ministers. So there's a lot to flesh out there, and I think we're still looking via email. June 17th, I did attend the Willet Indigenous Support Business Plan for the morning portion. And I did get an email this afternoon that the plan has now been submitted to the Chief Judge Gillespie by Graham, one of the lawyers who's working on it. So I think that's the next step in approval for it, I believe. And one of the biggest takeaways I took from that is the Glad reports. Gladu, sorry. That was really interesting. Not something I knew existed beyond that. So, and I full in support of it. To be quite honest, the concept of it reminds me of getting in trouble as a little child and having to actually talk about what you did and fess up to it to my parents. So that's, you know, I thought that was quite interesting, is to bring that up into an actual legal model. After that, I had the government modernizing policing roundtable, reviewing recommendation 2, 3, and 4. And then we have one more meeting in July, one more meeting in August, because then we're trying to push through all of recommendations. because then it will be presented to the teams into the province. June 27th, attended the wildfire preparedness roundtable. Lots of discussion and learning there. And, a good start to some more emergency planning, finding out where the gaps are, what can we do better. And some more networking and communication. Having some more communications. June 28th, had the North Development Initiative Track Rack Committee, for the Care of Cody. And so I've been sitting on this board for almost 2 years now. And it's the first time, because of the downturn in the economy and the investment portfolio, we actually had to defer one project because we were oversubscribed for the first time. So we had a very serious discussion about what that looked like, and that if we approved it, what it would look like for next year as well. So I'm really thankful that they have some really knowledgeable staff on there, and they're watching those investment portfolios very closely. And then on July 5th, I attended the 1-year alumni resilient civic leadership and a reunion via Zoom. And it was really nice to see everybody and see where some of the communities or members of councils are at a year later after we took it. So it was a really good catch up, and it was nice to see that everyone who attended that took something away. So yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Leach. Councillor Lee.
Really hard going last, because everybody's already talked about this.
Well, maybe we'll switch it around.
On June 8th, I did ride in the fire truck for the Pride Parade, and Dan Storkin and Chief Waikiki did, for the district's information, did read me the liability act, that if an alarm went off, I was going to a fire. So, figure out how to put all those seatbelts on and whatnot. So it was quite interesting, but I enjoyed the day. Went for coffee later on after some time at the park with Jackie Taggart and the mayor's wife, and that was lovely. June 16th, I attended the Thompson Regional Hospital District Board. And I had so much I was going to say here. Most of it was negative, because of it's always the same. We get our clinical updates, we get our COVID updates. They hired a communications person, and the request from the board to this communications person was to strive for more direct and honest information to rural communities. If we're closing our hospital for 2 days, tell us why we're closing our hospital for 2 days and make sure it's only 2 days. Yeah, what's going to be temporary, what's going to be permanent, because all the rural areas are dealing with the same thing, but not. It's uncomfortable when you don't know. Is this for a short period of time? Is this for eternity? Is this whatever? There was discussions on the delays with ambulance. I guess when our ambulance goes, they're all backlogged at the ER, waiting for someone to find a bed before they can offload a patient unless it's a trauma person. So it was really interesting to read the article, the letter to the editor from our previous mayor about the experience that she had and what good care she got. I kind of went, okay, we have all these issues, but when push comes to shove, or it's a life and death situation, the people are making it happen, the people on the front lines. So that was really great. They still don't have a staffing person for the rural areas. It's still centralized staffing, which is really a problem. I know there's a personal experience in the lab. They have someone from Revelstoke, but their lab is set up different. So now we have a little bit of confusion when one of the tubes doesn't work right. Because the tubes aren't where their tubes are, and yeah, it was interesting. On June 17th, I attended the Indigenous Court, and it was interesting to hear how it actually worked. They did have a mock trial there. I didn't get all of it. Parts of it were quite comical. They did go over the eligibility of going to Indigenous court, the procedures, the probation orders, the healing plans afterwards. And like both the previous counselors said, it was very much like sitting in the chair in front of your parents going, oh my. And you could see your whole world passing before you. I did ask a question, well, I asked a couple of questions, but I did ask the question on how the victims feel about the perpetrator not going to jail, but being out in the community with a probation order. And it wasn't directly answered, but Chief Darrell Bob did come up with that, how to go about working with these lawyers and getting the backing so that the Indigenous actually have their own probation officers, because they know the people in the community. They know if Bob over there isn't where he's supposed to be, whereas we necessarily wouldn't, or the RCMP necessarily wouldn't, because they're not at every court hearing or whatever. So I thought that was a really great, hopefully that initiative follows through. On June 21st, I did attend Indigenous Day, and I got to be a judge at the talent show, and it was amazing. Like, it was absolutely amazing. They had a first prize of $500 and a second prize of $300. Pretty sure the recipient of the $500 just scooched by the second place person because there was extra points if you were under a certain age. But it was great. Tina Turner was there and she did not win anything, but she was quite comical to watch. On June 27th, I was at the Wildfire Preparedness Roundtable as well. There was informative discussions on fire smart, cultural burning, and something which I never even thought of was the smoke regulations through the Ministry of Environment, which interfere with your cultural burning or your taking care of the forest floors. So those are things that need to be looked at. Wildfire risk reduction, of course, they need more funding for the rural areas. And a note for local government should relook at open burning bylaw for controlled burning and forest mitigation. And I'm sure Chief Wakey will bring that to staff if he hasn't already, but I did make note of it. On July 7th, there was a Gold Country meeting. It was Zoom because financially it's too costly to be meeting all over the province, so it's just easier on Zoom. There was board committee updates, and the geo tour dates have changed from August to September 9th, 10th, and 11th. So just because it was interfering with other big geo tours that we wouldn't get geocaching people here. July 11th, I also tuned into the Sea to Sky Destination Education update. Yeah, I love the launch of Don't Love It to Death brand. I thought that is phenomenal. There was a few little remarks about the signage for when people are going to the washroom in the woods. And I thought that was quite, rather than pushing for it, it's amazing what happens and doesn't happen. I think they're trying to learn from the Joffrey mess that occurred and trying to clean that up, as well as steer people in the right directions of being responsible for where you are and what you are. And rather than bringing up installing outhouses or whatever, they're telling you to dig a hole and make sure it's 200 meters from water and bury it. And it really, and somebody made the comment, yeah, well, then every 10 feet there's a roll of toilet paper flopping around. Right, and I thought, it kind of, yeah. It kind of lightened the mood on the, yeah. But as far as that, you can look at all of this on info@don'tloveittodeath.com, and you're probably going to give the same scenario. Any community can adopt the campaign and share photographs from their own area, which I thought was really interesting because they didn't have a lot of photography from our area. And so that was a really interesting point for me. And like I say, hopefully there's caution about the Joffrey Lakes solution when you're not ready for too many tourists. That's it.
Thank you, Councilor Reed. Item 17.1 CAO report.
That's me. So following from 11 to that, yes, Suzanne Denbeck, our economic development coordinator, was in the call as well. So I'm listening. This does play into a lot of the things she's working with. So we're part of that. And we have worked with the local photography brand Kessler to acquire some more photographs. So we keep trying to build up our database of some beautiful shots. East Lillooet, especially with Wolfman Communications, just so council's aware, we do have a communications contractor now. Right through my network of people I know in the industry. Her name's Kim Maitland. She runs a business called the Craft Design Studio. She's multi-talented, whether it's layouts online or physically for pamphlets, advertisements. She creates her own graphics. This signs us all over the rec center, keep 2 meters apart and show a bird or whatever like that. She actually created those. She's well known in the industry, especially in the Whistler area where she's based out of. She works right across the country. She has some individual clients as well. Through a connection that was able to snag her for a very reasonable rate. Budget. So she is currently working with me on taking our existing old brand standards and communication patterns, modernizing them a little bit, and creating guidelines that will run through the changes that you can see in council's priorities, and using council's priorities as the guiding principles for the economically colored messaging that we use. So the fall staff attended in communications on yes, will have sort of common theme public as well. There's plenty of experience online, so it's going to help us start gathering more information about how do we get to where people are. Partially on the internet, because it's just easier to gather information. Did a little survey during the EOC, see like are people going to our website or Facebook or the newspapers. So she's going to expand that data gathering and provide us with some analysis of how we get out there to communicate better with our community so that council can get feedback it needs from the community of what are the things that they really care about. Otherwise, doing the best we can, guessing based on the dogs to us, right? So she's begun that work. Start seeing things and next week the public consultation session coming up in a couple of weeks. So hear about that. Email and care to, and she'll help us with that virtual. Recreation Center, where we are now, is still ticking, despite its interim manager, which is me. It's not able to give as much time as I'd like to, so I just want to say shout out, thank you to the staff. This place running. Certification for management of the staff to backfill certifications. Which is huge. So a great thank you to them for keeping things running, but it is not sustainable for either thing. Stacked up, but if we start feeling the gap and having chief cook in the kitchen. Fortunately, we have had very recently a couple of, I think, likely very well qualified candidates for the manager position. Actually, okay with the salary. So, you know, some pre-interview calls with them later this week, bring a closed session to start decisions on their side of the budget. But fingers crossed. And finally, East Lillooet Memorial Garden has been a resounding success. Sort of there you saw that in person, but following from that, I'm sure some of you received communication from the website photo of Vancouver that the advertisement of that and the connections she made, organization made with History Channel is just this. It's now covered nationally across Canada as one of the highlights in BC to come to is the Willet because of that garden, but now also the connection to the Exact House and the bridge and so forth. Historical Society, large part of that. That we have this opportunity to take this little project and make it something so much bigger to translate the cultural tourism to the Willet. And one of the first things Laura is going to work on for that. This answer to this is that she's actually working about here to tie that in with the History Channel, perhaps even have that train stop in town with History Channel involved filming, literally now touring. Big things happen. That's my report. Oh, and yes. Nomination packages for the local election will be released in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Please check our website, lillooet.ca/2022 election. If you'd like any other information about that, contact the chief election officer. City minutes. But yeah, lillooet.ca/2022 election. That's
Okay. Counselor Weiss, you've got a question or comment?
I did, through the mayor, it's not really a part of a report, but I just wanted to throw it out there. Way the world is evolving since COVID and whatnot. I have brand new neighbors. They are absolutely fantastic so far. They're doing a phenomenal amount of work over on the property. But my big note is she works for a cybersecurity company out of Toronto. And she works out of her home and moved to Lillooet and is really looking forward to fiber optics, especially after the other day. So, and her husband actually works from home as well, and he is an IT guy for the city of Kelowna. And I'm like, wow, like how the world is changing, and you know, it can be done, and it's great. So there is hope for us having new residents and a bigger tax base and all kinds of things, and they don't need to be working on Main Street. I think it's fantastic. That was it.
Thank you, Counselor Big. Okay, we'll go on to new business. Item 18.1, East Lillooet. Recreation, use of the racetrack. Apparently, there's a group that's come together under the East Lillooet Rec Society and are all set to work with the kids, both in their motorized vehicles, motorized motorcycles and bicycles, and setting it up. However, we found out that, believe it or not, zoning bylaw 454 doesn't allow for any kind of racing anywhere in the community. So I'm imploring of you guys, if you give it some serious consideration, that we allow a variance. Summer is well on its way, and we sure like to see the kids in the community over there enjoying it. Yes, Councilor Lynch.
Maybe Karen wants to speak, you might answer my question.
So it wouldn't be a variance. Variance, you can't vary the use or density in the zoning bylaw. As being used to being the bearer of bad news, I'll just sort of jump into it. It's not uncommon for motor vehicle racetracks to not be permitted within municipal boundaries. Mostly it's a noise issue. So just sort of allowing them anywhere generally creates conflict and has neighbors coming out. So the mayor brought this to me and asked if council could consider a zoning bylaw amendment. Of course they can. Of course, I'm always going to recommend against that, but that's neither here nor there. Council is well within their discretion to ask staff to prepare a bylaw. The benefit of it having to go through the amendment process It will be subject to a public hearing, and the members of the community who are around that area will be able to come out and speak for or against it. We would also potentially be able to work in times of operation into that bylaw. However, I'm not going to do this without a council resolution. So if council did want to direct staff to do that, the resolution recommendation would be that staff prepare an amending bylaw to zoning bylaw 2018 number 454 to permit a motor vehicle track at the East Lillooet rec site.
Just before we go, does that mean they can't do anything until after the public hearing?
That is true.
Okay,
The other option is a temporary use permit, but that takes just as long as a rezoning.
okay. Councillor speak.
That was kind of my question. But yeah, I know they're hoping that then everything's good to go by tomorrow morning. So I would like to, whatever's more feasible to get it done faster.
Because it is a use provision in the bylaw, the two options are temporary use permit or a rezoning of the property. Both of them require 2 readings, public hearing, and then 2 more readings, so minimum 2 council meetings. There's no way around, even if you waive the public hearing, you still have to give notice of the waiving of the public hearing. And then still go back for another meeting. The option is to direct me to do this. I will drop everything else, which will annoy some other applicants who have some things in strain. Draft a bylaw as fast as I can, call a special meeting, have first and second reading. You call another special meeting. 2 weeks later, because we have to give notification in the newspaper and pass it back. So I can try and figure out how to finagle this to make it go as quickly as possible, but regardless, we do have that 2-week gap between first, second reading and adoption.
Go ahead.
To follow up, so not that I'm suggesting this, but if nobody calls bylaw on them, do we have a problem? He's giving me the test there. Okay,
No,
then ask the question.
If nobody complains. The point is that they're racing up the hill behind my place anyway.
Yeah.
So the noise, and it's the people in the area that want to do it. Plus, we've got guys with 12-gauge shotguns that are letting loose during Sunday. So nobody along their road should dare complain about noise. Anyway, so let me, sorry, go ahead.
The legal way I'm going to answer that is that I can only tell you what your legal obligation is with regards to the zoning bylaw. However,
That's understood.
council can choose to enforce or not enforce its bylaws at its pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, which one of you was first? Don't fight over it, Jamie.
I have two questions here. I have 2 questions to the mayor. The first one is are we talking about the BMX track here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is that track actually able to accommodate motorbikes? Like, I think we're talking motocross, aren't we?
You have a motocross and bicycles and
Yeah, BMX and.
We're not talking about the BMX. We're not talking about the BMX.
Oh.
East Lillooet.
Okay, I'm like.
Yeah, I'm like, it's like a BMX.
For the horse here, guys. Okay, and then what was the other one I had? I'd like to comment to oh my gosh, brain's fried now, guys, sorry. The drop everything idea, I'm not for that, and but that's fair. And I had one more and it's gone, so.
Well, think about it. Get it back to Councillor Hoppel.
So, through the mayor. Or maybe not, because you're just negative over there. But no, really, is there any, like, what is the difference of the bikes going up a trail, which they do over there all over the place, or going around the track? Is it the fact that it's the noise? Or is it the fact that the track belongs to,
It's
is it
they forbid it according to bylaw, no racing in the town.
in
period.
the town? And so it doesn't matter, like even though they're doing it, and they do, because they always have.
Unless they don't call it a race, maybe they call it a.
They're playing around on a Sunday afternoon, I
Yeah.
mean, right?
When you start to organize a motor vehicle
Yeah.
experience.
Right.
The density of motor vehicles in there does
Yeah.
increase.
Right.
Sound.
So,
It's different than someone out in the back.
and that would be the same as on a private piece of property, right? So
Although
Murkowski
a
has,
private piece of property would also, Mr. Mayor, be subject to
The noise.
flat.
right, but I mean, you know, our mayor has like, say, 5 acres, right? And if he was to say, hey, you know, you can race on my yard, I'm just saying. All the way around, like, that would be okay though, correct? As long as it wasn't like, I'm just looking for a loophole, so.
Permitted as a motor vehicle racing.
Right, okay,
No, that's right. It's against the.
okay.
Okay. Councilor Lee.
So I think just to add to all of the discussions here, because from what I've spoken to some of the members of that are trying to get this going, is they also want to, because it's the old stock car track that isn't really, it's kind of been defunct for years. They have some the equipment that they actually want to build some jumps and stuff for it, and because this is stopping them, they can't start doing and building jumps with the kids, so I think that's also part of it, which is why they were probably hoping to get this done as soon as possible.
But wait a minute, the building jumps is not racing.
Right.
Sorry,
Again,
Councilor
a
Lee.
loophole.
Oh, I think the new age verbiage is they want a pump track. That's where they race, they jump, they whatever, can be bicycles, can be.
Yeah.
Motorbikes, can be whichever. I'm kind of leaning with Counselor Howell, I'm not into, let's drop everything and push this. I think it's unfair to other people in the community that have been probably waiting for 2, 3, 6, 8 number of months to get things done. And I'm also wondering about liability issues, like who owns the property?
East Rule, but they're taking care of that and the insurance. My feeling on, I take your point, but this is for the kids.
Oh, I get
I
that.
got a soft spot for the kids, the adults, business or otherwise, they can wait. But we don't do enough for the kids as far as I'm concerned, but that's just my opinion. Anything else? Where we sit with that? I think we just better leave it alone.
There's an motion on the table, but if you want to make the motion, I promise to do some upfront research first to see what other loopholes there might be that I can ethically share with you. I have only been here 6 of the last 17 days, so I haven't gotten too deep into this. It also there hasn't been an application to look at. So if you want to make the motion that I research it, report back to the mayor, and with options, we can go from there depending on how much.
How
time
does
it's gonna
council
take.
feel about that? A little bit. Councilor Howell, second Councilor Lee.
Oh, I want to ask a question.
Oh, go ahead with the question, Councilor Lee.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. So. Because it's for the kids, I'm all for the kids, everything's for the kids, let's carry on with that one. But I'm like, now, okay, there hasn't even been an application put forward. So. Feel the dedication of getting it done for the kids, but there again. We're opening a side door. I'm not gonna say a back door. We're opening a side door because you haven't actually done the physical. You need to apply for this to happen, and then maybe we can make it happen quicker than possible.
We don't know that yet. That's what this resolution is going to do.
Well, we do know that an application wasn't made.
Through the mayor, I believe the intention of bringing it forward to this was to not require them to make an application. Because of the time and money that entails.
Okay. So it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you, Gary. Thank you, council. We'll see where this goes. Item 18.2, which is the letter Brad Bistro regarding Little Rail Line to the Ministry of Transport.
Yes, so back in, I was performing, I believe, but anyway, sometime back months ago, I contacted Chris and spoke to him regarding, kind of everything that we've had experienced in BC, through last fall, road closures, not having, Highway 8, delays in absolutely everything when it comes to products, and just knowing, like, so my family history, and, you know, my husband would be the third generation in my family. My husband and my brother both, they're third generation of railroaders, so I come with a lot of knowledge even of it, and I know CN's a huge company and what have you, but I tend to follow it. And I know this is a fight that has been going on for years, but what struck the chord in conjunction with like what had happened in the area or in BC is that the new CEO of CN is female, which is new. And it does play a role because there's some compassion there sometimes. I'm hoping to be not, but anyway, she spoke to, it's in the letter, I just want to get the wording right. The BC Council of Forest Industries, the annual convention earlier this spring. And I happened to catch it on the LinkedIn feed that I was following. And it was quoted on there that she is determined to make CN the best railway in North America in the eyes of the customers. And the path that is through a cooperative, coordinated approach to change. And speaking to the BC Council of Forest Industries is interesting because if you look at the geography of it, right now, the only line that's really doing any transportation is the main line. So from the Thornton Yard up through the Canyon Glen and then the Kamloops, and then it goes east, right? It follows the Trans-Canada. The only other rail line that CN owns is actually the old BCR line or PGE line originally, right? Which runs up through Lillooet. And of those two lines, the majority of the mills, which this is the industry that she's talking to, the BC Forest Industries, like that's a huge executive room of people that she's talking to. Those that get their wood from the area, it's on this line. And a lot of those mills have been shut down. Rail access has been taken out. Like our mill actually used to have rail access right down, and then they would bring it up and put it on, which it hasn't existed for a number of years. So it just struck my chord. I started questioning it, and then I started thinking and overthinking, and then along with the emergency planning and our OCP, you know, and stressing the communication between a large company and hearing what residents feel and trying to decipher and weigh the emotion of that. That we really need them at the table, and it was mentioned at the wildfire preparedness. We need them at the table so we can effectively plan. And it's not necessarily pushing them to say we want, because it always with large companies, whether it's CN or BC Hydro or what have you, not always going at them for money because it's industry and you got to give us this because you're coming through our territory, but really starting a relationship and having a communication with them. Say, look, we would like to know what your 5, 10-year, 20-year plan is so we can plan around you, with you, and try and build that relationship up. Now, That's my pipe dream. Yeah, so, but, so I explained this to Brad and we brought in Melissa Lansman. So the reason we brought her in is that she's a conservative MP who is actually the shadow minister of transportation. So, and she, I knew at the time, because I had kind of been following her as well when all of this started, that she had just most recently visited the Port of Vancouver and could see the backlog of shipping containers sitting in the ocean, waiting to get in the port to then get on the rail cars to then get on the trucks, right? And all of the logistics of this is all a train reaction. Like it's, I've been told that when you stop one train, that's $3 billion of goods being stopped. So if one derailment happened, that's a huge commodity, not just for BC, but for the entire country. So that's where I was going with this. They helped me put it into words. They forwarded it on to Minister Algebra. Algebra. And hopefully we will get a response. And I'm hoping that if we do get a response, federal government can lean on CN to try and get some communication going here. Now, that being said, a couple of weeks later, going into the second item, what I called, we get every year we get the rail safety week publication.
Yeah.
And yes, we can do our business to, educate people, blah, 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 without them actually giving us anything to, help with that. So I would like us to respond to this, to fill out this proclamation and attach it to this letter and send it back to this email for Marie Pierre Trigan, whatever, if I'm not saying that right, I'm not gonna try. And also CC it to all of the communities along this corridor to try and get some action and just say, yeah, no problem, we'll promote rail safety, but we want some communication in response. So I'd like to have staff draft a letter to that effect, and just anywhere possible. That's what I
think that's a wonderful idea.
Let me ask a question through the mayor. So a letter like this, I mean, we got it, wouldn't it be flooded throughout already?
This one here,
This one here?
the real safety, yes, but what I'm saying is attaching the letter that was sent federally to the federal
Right.
transportation minister, asking all of the municipalities along this rail line to sign the proclamation with this as background, and then we can then forward it on to the Minister of Transportation. So it's kind of like spamming the email. In essence.
That letter is their typical corporate responsibility scenario that they'll do every year blindly. I think
Yeah.
Councillor Leach makes a good point and say, sure, we'll sign it, but here, let's sit down and talk. I think it's a good idea.
I don't,
I was just wondering, like, is it already on the quarter or we just, like,
they
I
probably
think
send it
that-
to absolutely everybody that has rail lines
Right.
running through.
right, but backing with the other letter, yeah.
Because CN operates this program through Operational Lifesaver, which is, I'm not sure if it's a separate entity, but it's kind of like an umbrella branch of CN. So and then because we're speaking of like safety planning in here and know that living with a railroader, their jobs have gotten safer and safer and safer and safer with all the policies that come down
course
the
they
way.
Of course they
So it is just playing on that. bit
Hey,
too.
from what I can understand then, and it sounds to me like the council is in favor of it, that we direct staff to bring this back to us. That this resolution is supported and we attach this letter of May 25th and we send it back to the CEO of CN, but every single community along the line, up and down. That makes sense.
Up and down, sorry, the Prince George line,
Yeah.
like
so the-
that one?
Yeah,
So, okay.
yeah, so
I know you used to write it, yeah, okay.
yeah, so all of the municipalities along it.
Good.
I mean, when you guys are down here, UBCN, gather everybody together and start off. Okay, yes, Councillor Howell.
Okay, so just because I have a question, and there's also the devil's advocate. I'm toggling over this in my head through the mayor, to council is when we talk about, and I like your idea, Councillor Leach, I think it's awesome, and it's very strategic and very well thought out. And, but one thought does come to mind, and that is if we're talking about building relationships with them and we're saying, hey, and we're gonna reach out to them with a request to build relationships, and we're going to gain, gain the interest of the communities down the corridor to also engage in this process collaboratively. Do we want to hold something in place going like, well, if you want this, you gotta give us that? Part of me's like, the best foot to start off on. Just devil's advocating.
So the way I see it is that this, where it is, the proclamation, honestly, is just an email.
It's a boilerplate.
That, yeah, it absolutely means nothing to them.
Yeah.
They probably
Yeah,
get it back,
no, I
they probably
get that.
file it.
What was it
Yeah.
to do with wake up their CEO? Oh, geez, somebody's really paying attention.
Someone's
here.
listening, yeah.
Somebody read it.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Counselor Leach, you'll move it. Second, Mr. Taylor, do you have the gist? of
I'll second it.
We're relying on you. Seconds, Counselor Hoffel. Any further discussion? No.
Yes.
No. No. Not yet. It's not. So,
Is it public?
Mr. Plessy, we are still at a motion on the table
Oh,
for
I'm
the amendment
sorry.
for that at this point.
I thought maybe it was all bunch of soup.
okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carrie, thank you. Go to item 20. Maybe someone to move that the July 12th, 2022 regular council meetings be adjourned.
Oh.
We do have a what?
That's the chair names.
Okay, we'll move item 19. The meeting is open to questions from the media and public. Yes, Mrs. Bussey, you have a question?
Yes, I do. I wanted to, ask this question. If, does anybody know that land that we're talking about putting a racetrack on? Is that not special? Like Dr. Brooks tells me that the gun rifle place, the gun place, that property, plus the, where the fire hall used to, the fire people used to work out, plus where the racetrack is, and then the next property up was all some form of recreation property that was done on this particular thing. And so the other question, like, I'd love to ask if you guys knew that it was me that came up with the idea. And it was because we live right there on Airport Road. We have the kids riding their bikes up on the trails up the back. And we also have a family next door with two young kids and a family on the other side. So I came up with the idea of why don't we open the racetrack and let the kids race on the weekends or whenever they want to do their things, because is that not better than having them hanging around corners and doing other things that we can get them interested in and racing with bikes? It can be quite a challenge. I know our yard when we bought our property was racetracks.
Yes, it was.
It took us 5 years to build. I just wanted to ask that question because I do know the kids in the area and we hear them up the back hill, and it would be nice to see them all in one area competing and having something to do. The next question I want to ask is if the council is
I haven't
aware.
answered that one yet. Okay. The reply to you is yes. Discussions with Mr. Taylor. For us to deal with that rec society is a lot more appropriate than with individuals, right? Looking for relief. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes.
Next question.
I wanted to know if council is aware that the visitor center got $15,000 through Destination BC. We used to get 12,500. They also get their funding from District of Little Ours is 22,000. Theirs will be 21 when they add those two things together. And I'm not against it. I'm 100% behind that. But I just wanted to know that you guys, I want you to understand that the museum is a job, and it is a facility that is here for the protection of the history of the community. The School of Archives that we're finding out are worth a lot of money, and we're being responsible for that. So I would like to ask council to get together with me, and I sit down and tell you what it's costing us to run the museum. We've got a new manager, so it'll be the first time that we've had somebody that understands the archives and understands history and the promotion of the museum. So thank you for giving us back our $22,000 this year. We will work hard to see what we can come up with. We went through COVID for 2 years and kept it open and scrambled like hell to get enough money to pay the wages. Appreciate what you've done for us. And I would like to have the opportunity to look at other ways, like Jeremy is saying that next year is going to be different. We're going to have to maybe come up with that money. If that's the case, so we need to know that now, so that we can work on that. So I want you to know I'm very happy tonight to walk away with this. I appreciate it. I'm sure you're all happy it's over. So thank you for Jerry for his time. Listening to me.
Good.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Counselor
Can
Weed.
you respond to that a little bit?
After it was a question.
I know it was a question, but somewhere in there was a convoluted question, I'm sure. I personally think, because this is an election year, that the Historical Society, the museum, the Miyazaki House, all of them would be better off to do a delegation to the new council in the fall and then carry it forward to budget time. I think to sit here and talk to those of us that may or may not be at this table is a waste of your valuable time and ours. And I know you put enough time into the museum as it is. So that was all just that comment. I think it would be better done in the fall with new mayor and council.
But okay, that's good. That's a valid point. Keep in mind, and I repeat myself, guys, if we have an appropriate heritage policy, it's all over. If we dictate this is what you got, you're going to get, go away. And I think it's really important that that heritage policy happens, within the next year or two. Good. Any further questions?
Actually, Steve, I am now completely finished for the day, for the night. Thank you.
I just want to say how much I miss having Ms. Bessie in the audience.
Okay, I need someone to move this meeting be adjourned. Counselor Weed, second Counselor Howe, question, those in favor, thank you. And thank you, Mrs. Bucky, for sitting with us throughout this.
I was